You're going to do roll call?
Excellent. I think now it's actually recording. The record is in progress. We can start.
Okay. Okay, so we'll start with who's on the call. So George, do you want them to go ahead and just give a little sentence about where they're from?
Yeah, I will appreciate that everybody introduce themselves. Also, we make sure
okay.
that we know
All right,
who is
so George?
If actually you can follow the list from the screen. If you look at the screen, you should see my slide. I posted up the names. If you actually follow that order, it's probably easier, please.
Okay, so George, you start. George, unmute. Okay, is Mohammed here? Tanya?
I'm unmuted. Okay, sorry about that. I had to unmute in two places. So this is George Alter. I'm Director of ICPSR at the University of Michigan. We're a data repository for the social sciences.
And you're also on the Executive Committee of BioCAD?
I am.
Okay, Mohammed? Tanya?
Tanya's not here. She sent the apologies, so she knows.
Okay. Helen? I didn't see Helen on. Michael?
Yeah, I'm here.
I think you have the replacement for Helen. I understand his colleague was supposed to join in on behalf of Helen.
Yeah, John Westbrook here, sitting in for Helen.
Okay. Michael?
Yeah, I'm here. So I'm with Roche, Research and Early Development Informatics, and in this organization I'm responsible for all the pre-competitive collaboration type of things. And I'm involved with various organizations, the Pistoia Alliance, the Transmart Foundation, IMI project, and in particular one that deals with translational informatics, and there I'm co-leading the standards work package, and I'm involved with the European IMI2 strategic governance group for data and knowledge management, and also particularly interested in metadata management.
Okay. Michael Dumontier.
No, it's Alan. It's Alan Derry. You skipped one.
Okay. Ian?
No, Steph, you skipped Alan Derry. Alan,
yeah. Oh, sorry, Alan. I skipped right over you. I apologize.
No, that's okay. I just got connected anyway, so I apologize for being late. Did you want?
Just the name, the organization, and what was relevant to participating in this group.
Okay. So I'm at the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences, part of NIH. And the relevance to this group, I would say, is that I serve on a couple of other standards-related activities within PD2K on developing something like a standards information resource and on the possibility of supporting community-based standards development. And plus, for NIEHS per se, we're very interested in working on developing a vocabulary up to an ontology for environmental health science research.
Thank you. Michael? Michael?
Michelle is not here. He sent apologies too.
Okay. And Ian? And Carol's not. Is Carol on?
Yeah, I think she is.
Yes, I'm on. I'm here all the time. Hello.
Hello. So give us a little background, Carol.
And okay, I will do. Metadata and interoperability for a long time. I run the FAIRDom initiative, which is to do with metadata collection and systems biology. I run research objects, which I gave a BioCaddy webinar on last week, which is all to do with packaging and describing profiles of research objects. And I'm also co-leader of the Elixir interoperability platform.
Fantastic. Alejandra?
Yes, hello, I'm Alejandra. I work with Susana in the Oxford Research Center at the University of Oxford, and we are interested in data management activities mainly and standards.
Jeff?
So Jeffrey Greta, University of California, San Diego, principal investigator for the NIDDK Information Network, DKNet, and the Neuroscience Information Framework, two projects, that look at data discovery and resource discovery, and also a member of the BioCaddy Executive Committee.
Melissa?
Hi, I'm Melissa Handel from Oregon Health and Science University in Oregon. I am the PI for the Monarch Initiative, which aims to perform large-scale integration across human and model resources for disease discovery. And I also co-founded the Resource Identification Initiative and have a deep interest in metadata alignment across numerous resources.
Marceline Harris?
He sent her regrets.
Okay. I don't know how to say this. Hi, Anu?
No, it's my question. You skipped one.
Gosh, I keep doing that. Sorry, Michael.
That's okay.
Go ahead.
This is Mike Herta. I'm Associate Director of the National Library of Medicine. Our research focus, of course, is data science and informatics, and NLM includes Lister Hill Center as well as NCBI, with which you're probably familiar. I co-led the group from which the DDI and the standards efforts have evolved, and those have now spun off into individual programs. And I continue to work with DDI on the project team as well as on the teams related to community-based standards efforts and standards coordination. Thanks.
Thanks. Okay, next. Hi, Nu. Kim. Okay. Jared?
Yeah, hi, this is Jared. Yeah, Jared from ICPSR. I work with George and Mary Vardigan, and I work on the metadata group here.
Kevin Reed?
Hi, Kevin Reed here from NYU School of Medicine. We're currently working at NYU to build a data catalog for our own researchers, and I'm also a former Associate Fellow at the National Library of Medicine, where I worked with Mike Huerta on some of the very early developments of the DDI.
Philippe?
Philippe Rocasera from Oxford Research Center, working in Cincinnati, mostly interested in metadata management.
Susanna? Yeah, I can pass. Well, okay, so University of Oxford, and I am on the BioCaddy executive group. I'm also actually part of CEDAR, which is another BD2K center. This activity on the metadata are very much related to those. And I'm also part of the Elixir UK node.
Heidi? Jones?
Hi, I'm Joan Starr. I'm at California Digital Library, where I'm the service manager for EasyID, which is a persistent identifier service. And I think I was invited to be part of this group because I am the chair of DataCite's metadata working group.
Correct.
Who
we send apologies as well.
Okay. Okay. Wida?
Yeah, hi, this is Shraddha. I'm sitting in on behalf of Vida Dong. I'm from a National Center for Toxicological Research, the center of FDA at Jefferson, Arkansas.
Thank you. What was your name again? I'm sorry.
Shraddha Thakkar, SHRADDHA.
Great, thank you. Mary?
Hi, I'm Mary Vardigan. I work with George and Jared at ICPSR, and I'm also the director of another DDI, the Data Documentation Initiative, which is a metadata standard for the social sciences.
And you're also our note taker.
That's right.
Thank you for that, Mary. John?
John introduced himself earlier for Ellen.
Okay. Ray?
I'm at Johns Hopkins University in the Institute for Computational Medicine and Biomedical Engineering. I work in the area of cardiac modeling to study mechanisms of arrhythmia, and I run a project called the Cardiovascular Research Grid, which is about providing data management and analysis capabilities to cardiovascular researchers.
And I think Wa is away. Wa? Yep. And then was there anyone else that was on the call that's not on the membership list?
This is Ron Margolis. I think I'm on the membership list, but I wasn't called out before. I'm the NIH lead for the Data Discovery Index, which is being performed by BioCaddy. I'm also the lead at NIDDK for the DKNet project, and I'm involved in a lot of activities with the ABS office and DD2K.
Ron, I think I added you to the mailing list, but not the membership list, but I can easily change that for you.
Okay.
This is Matthew Brush. I work with Melissa Handel at OHSU on the project she mentioned, Monarch, the Resource Identification Initiative, Eagle Eye Resource Discovery System, and have been doing some work in collaboration with Elsevier lately on kind of metadata and ontology requirements analysis around experimental metadata strategies.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, Suzanne, I'll turn it back to you.
Fantastic, thank you. If you all can kindly mute when you're not talking so we avoid any background noise. Do you hear me well? Is my voice clear enough?
Yes.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay, so I realize that we spent a lot of time for the introduction, but I thought it was important given this is the first call for this larger group. So I have actually one slide to really very briefly introduce what BioCaddy is, although I'm hoping that all of you have read the white paper because that's really the base of what we're going to do and how this working group tree fits in the context. And because we're going to share the slides, you know, you can take the time to read at your own pace. But very briefly, the idea that BioCaddy is going to do for data what PubMed has done for literature. We expect to deliver a prototype in 2.5 years from now. So there is a developer team that Hua and Jeff are leading on. And there are different working groups, and there will be pilots as well. And the idea that the working groups are going to tackle the different challenges or topics that need to be addressed and passed to the development team for implementation. I'm just putting here on the screen also who is involved, the steering committee. So you heard already from some of our on the call, the executive committee, and the link once more to the white paper where the vision for this DDI is outlined. Okay, so let's go into the detail of what is the working package tree supposed to do, what the goals are, and I'm going to move also to explain what we expect that you as a larger group are going to help us to do. Okay, so the general goals of this group is to really define the metadata specification in order to support the use cases which have been collected, and the competency questions which have been derived from those use cases. And then pass the specification, as I say, to the core development team that they can move to implement and test these. The idea is that we are going to do the work in somehow two phases, although there is not a clear delineation between the two phases. It's probably going to be one, a big phase in, progressively done. But the idea is that we are focusing at the beginning on identifying the very generic core metadata elements to support those queries, but actually create a core that is future-proofed for progressive extension as we move into metadata, which is very specific to support certain queries, for example, more molecular level query or more disease-driven type of query. As I said, everything will be done guided by the use cases and the competency question, which we have already collected from several sources, and I will explain you this later. Although we do expect that the prototype is not going to answer all the questions, but perhaps they're going to partly answer those, because some are very, very granular questions. So general information about the working group 3. So we have the website where all you have been subscribed to by Steffi. The goal and information is listed there. So are the previous notes from the previous call when we were just working internally within the biocountry group. So the notes are all available, and so are the files. To give you an idea of the timeline, because this is a very, short project, 2 years and a half we have in total as I said, we need to have a core metadata pretty soon, and the first phase is supposed to end early next month, and then move into the second phase. It's important to mention that this is a joint effort with another WG3 center, which is CEDAR. So you heard, I mentioned before, Michel de Montier, who could not attend today, is also part of CEDAR. And so CEDAR is the Center for Expanded Data Annotation and Retrieval. Because metadata is core to the CEDAR Center, but also because Mark Musen, with the PI of the CEDAR Center, co-chairs with George Alter, representing BioCamzy, a BD2K-wide metadata working group. And we also, with the link through Carol, anyway, to myself, we are also connecting to the Elixir activity on metadata. So as you can see, we're trying to span the links to all the other efforts, and of course the link with the NIH, with Allen, and the NML by Mike and the other are important, because you already have done and are doing work relating on metadata and standards. This group has dependency and synergy with other BioCAD activity, namely the core team, of course, because that's where the development will happen, but also working package 4, which has not started yet and will kickstart soon, which focus on test benchmark, and sorry for the spelling here, but the use cases are also related to that group. Okay, so what is your role in this working package 3? Before I'm going to explain what we have done, I'm going to summarize what we expect from you so that you can then read the next slide bearing this in mind. So we have done some work on a Stroman, we have Stroman work, some work on putting together a list of metadata elements, and we have done that by looking at existing mapping, by mapping other metadata schema, and etc. And we also put together a process, some standard operating procedure to do that. And so we have a set of 4 Google documents, which I will explain to you in the next slides. What we are asking you to do on this Stroman activity is to provide your feedback. You have access to the documents and you can put comments on that. And that's the way we would like to do, so that everybody can see. We ask you to do that in the next 2 weeks, because as I say, we have a very short timeline, and we need to then package and release publicly, widely, outside this group, all the documentation we have done, at the same time as the development team starts to test and implementation. So this is the first thing we ask you to do. But then, as you can see, I'll explain to you what the next phases, the next steps are for this group. And we want your advice before even we start this next phase, which is more how do we move from this list of metadata to create a conceptual model. Of course, there are many models, there are many ways to do it. And we would like to use your expertise or your experience on where we should go and what we should do. And again, this is now some feedback within the next week. It's very much appreciated. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, first of all, let me just take any question at this stage, because from now on I'm going to move to explain what we have done and explain exactly what are the different documents. Any specific questions so far? Okay, hearing none, unless you are talking and you are muted, I'm going to move forward. Okay, so this is the Stroman work that we've done so far. What we have done is compiled a list of data discovery initiatives, because we are not the first one to tackle this problem, because analyzing the metadata schema that this initiative have used is very valuable. We are looking in the different meta models that exist or are being built for representing the metadata schema, for the representing metadata, because in preparation of these next steps, when we want to do guidance on, we have collected not just the working group 3, but other people as well in biocountry have collected use cases and competency questions, which we call it the top-down approach, because we're going to use these questions to drive the selection of the metadata. But we also at the same time have used a bottom-up approach, which means we look at generic schema, metadata schema, and some in the life sciences, more specific, and of course the list is growing, and identify which are the metadata elements that they have in common. So this is the bottom-up approach. So the result of the bottom-up and the top-down will be compared. That's what we are doing, and so that we can identify, the key core metadata elements, the more generic one, and progressively extend it to add those more domain-specific ones. The idea is that because we are looking at a lot of efforts, a lot of standard initiative groups, and etc., in order to make this collection, this list available, and so that people can see what we have used and we can track the evolution of this standard that we are mapping, we have created what we call a collection in biosharing. So biosharing is an information resource, listing standards and related activity. It's a searchable registry. Collection is we group records we are relevant to a project. So we are creating a collection for biocountry, and here there is the link. I'm not going to actually open the link, if it's okay, but you can do at your own time as I pass the slide to you, or if there would be a question I can show later. Okay, so let me walk through the 4 documents that perhaps you have already looked at, given that they are available from the working tree Google folder. There are 4 documents. The first one is the SOP, the Standard Operating Procedure. So in this document, actually, which let me acknowledge that it's worked by Alejandra and Philippe with contribution from myself, contain a list of material that we have reviewed. So this is where we are listing as a textual list what we have reviewed. And as I say, in the biosharing collection, they would be searchable. But we also, this is the document where we are outlining the approach that we are using to make this mapping. How do we track the provenance of this standard and this model that we are mapping? In the second document, this is actually, it's called Selected Competency Question. This is a work that Mary Vardigan and Philippe, with contribution from George, Steph, and other people from the executive group, have actually put together. So this is a selection of a quite large list of use cases, which we have collected in different ways. Those have been collected during a use cases workshop that we ran in March this year. They've been somehow listed from the white paper, the BioCandy white paper. They've also been submitted by the community, the larger community, also through the 4C11 group during and before the use cases workshop in March. But they've also been provided by Phil Bourne and other NIH officers as a list of desired questions that the DDI should address. Now, this list of questions, you can imagine sometimes a narrative, sometimes a user story. So what the group has done, particularly Mary Philippe, they have abstracted from use cases competency questions. They try to make them as generic as possible because mostly they're somewhere similar to each other. They've also started to color code the key information in those questions, the key metadata in this question that will be needed in order to run the query, in order to retrieve some results that answer the question, so the competency question. That's why when you look at the document, you will see some colors, and therefore that represents the metadata that needs to be present in the DDI to answer the question. The set of actually, sorry, I'm reading the slide actually myself. Point is, you will see that there are the variety of questions, and some questions will be answered in full by the DDI, but some will only be answered in parts because some are really very, very granular and might not be the scope of the prototype at least.
Excuse me, Suzanne, I have a question.
Please.
This is Mike.
Oh, Mike, yes.
Yes. So in terms of these color coding, is gene the element, or is level of biological organization the element there?
That's a very good question. I think because gene is just one molecular entity, and there will be other molecular entities we're going to look at, perhaps we will have to have a molecular entity superclass and then list them under. So that's what I'm trying to say. You have to take this highlight question with a pinch of salt. They don't represent the final metadata, but they represent in that question what is a metadata element.
Great, thank you.
I have a question too. This is Joan.
Hi, Joan.
It looks like author is not color-coded, and I just want to point out that actually pulling apart how author is supported is quite complicated. Just want to note that.
Thank you. And actually, as I say, that this is just a snippet. And even, for example, in that use case, it's not even database it's highlighted, but somehow I think it's good to look at the entire list. This is just a snippet, and it's work in progress, which either means there is another question before that where author and potentially role of the author, or even the type of database it's highlighted, okay? But because this is a work in progress document, so it's a work in draft, it might not be highlighted in that one, as I say. So, but actually, so let me just make sure that I understood your question. Are you saying that representing author is difficult?
No, it's just that there are many questions that would. I think the highlighted items, it sounded like you were indicating those are metadata items, and I'm simply wanting to say that so is author. And in thinking about the data discovery index, many questions would come up in thinking about author, how you would tie that into personal identification, for example, would come up. You know, there are lots of other questions to be answered, and it's similarly complex. That's all I wanted to point out.
No, I agree. I appreciate. Thank you. And as I say, specifically for this one, definitely author, or it's the person in and the role of that person for the data set that need to be retrieved is indeed the core metadata. As I said, it's not just highlighted in the snippet that I have highlighted in the slide. So,
Susanna, this is Melissa. Can I just follow up with one comment really quickly? I just wanted to kind of suggest that, there's actually quite a lot of work going on exactly what you just said in the sort of roles and attribution between people and these different components that might be in the discovery system. There's a Force 11 working group that's just starting, and we're also just starting a Global Alliance for Genomics and Health working group on attribution, and that's actually the focus of, sort of technical focus of how to represent those associations. So be happy to feedback when we...
Perfect. This is the kind of feedback we want. So let me go through all of it, because you will see we are putting together a list of core metadata to be expanded. And for those core metadata that we have listed from use cases and etc., even the label of those metadata or the property are not fully defined, and that's where we want your input to say, okay, when it comes to identify author or the role of the person, let's work together with this group. That's exactly the kind of feedback we want and the links we want to make. So as I say, this is all work in progress. That's why it's trauma. So absolutely the right input we want from you. Okay. The third document, so that's the use cases and the competency question, which is what we call somehow the top-down approach. Then we're doing the bottom-up approach. So this is a mapping file. So this is now a Google spreadsheet, and this is again just a snippet to one you see at the bottom of the slide. So in that spreadsheet, there are two workbooks. One actually is working to map very generic metadata schema, and a second workbook is actually to write some initial set of life sciences specific metadata schema, because you can imagine there are many, and we will have to understand how many we map, which is the granularity we want to go down to, and where is the cutoff in terms of what is the DDI going to allow as a query and what are not going to allow as a query. So, but anyway, again, this is work in progress. Please go and have a look at that document afterwards. So in the document, the idea is that if available, the formal representations such as the XML schema or the semantic model are used as the input material. So that's what is important when we say we want to track the provenance of what we are mapping. And we want to explicitly say which is the information we are mapping actually. And all this information then is being represented into this collection under biosharing. And again, this is because it's an extensive document. I did not want to go through it for time purpose, but explain to you what we have done first. Okay, the fourth document, the fourth and last document. Just want to have a look at what time it is. Okay, yes, 20 past. So the fourth document actually, it's indeed, again, a work in process document, but this is where we are then actually listing the core, which there seems to be the common metadata element that comes from the top-down approach, so the use cases, and from the bottom-up approach, the mapping of all these existing metadata schema. So this is where are being listed, and indeed, as you can see now, the entity is called person, not more authors. This is where don't get, the entity name is not the final one, but it's just to have a placeholder. But this is exactly where Joanne and Melissa, we would like to have your comment on and what is that we need to link to or connect to. Yes. Alejandra was pointing to me that indeed between the attributes of the person, we have already found that many of the schema that we mapped, are defined as role and, for example, and giving an identifier to the person and etc. And what we are trying to do is also to link it the entity which are selected to the relevant competency questions. So the idea is that, as I said before, we aim to have a maximum coverage of use cases, although we do foresee that not all questions can be answered, because as I said, some questions will require very deep and very domain-specific metadata that the DDI might not cover for. Okay, so this is the 4 documents created so far, and as I said, we would like the feedback and any suggestion, any comments on those. Let me also explain you what the next steps are, because we also need your input in this. So the work to date in terms of the mapping and an initial core set of metadata will be also reviewed not just by you, but by this group, but also by both the executive committee and the steering committee. So we need everybody's feedback. We will need to, if the list of metadata elements that we collected is quite a longer list, then we need to work into rank this list according to the priority and associate them to a certain requirement level. What's a must, what is a should, and etc. In parallel to this, we need to start thinking about how do we represent these metadata elements. So we need to think about this conceptual model to identify one, are there use one that exists or to extend if it's needed. We don't intend to duplicate, of course. And the idea is that as I said, we have this list of metadata models, so please look in the SOP documents. And the idea is that these models need to follow the FAIR principle of findable, accessible, interoperable, reproducible principle, which are also FORCE 11 and Elixir endorsed principle. So the idea is that whatever is the metadata model that we are going to use, this needs to accommodate the core, which has been identified, whatever final form the core will be, and progressively need to be capable of accessing domain-specific extensions as these get identified. So this second output, so this conceptual model, is a machine actionable output indeed. For this representation, the idea is that we need to look at the current model and entity relationship model, and now we can actually represent the final list of metadata. I believe I only have one more slide, probably. Let me just double check. Oh yes, this is my actually last slide, where I simply want to, I repeat what I already said before, where we want your input on. The Stroman work, so the 4 Google documents, and how do we move forward to this conceptual model, given that there are many, but many of you on this call have experience with using conceptual models. What I also wanted to say, and I did not have time to, when you look in the SOP document, you will see that in addition to mapping existing mapping metadata schema bottom-up approach, we have also leveraged on work that has already been done by the NLM team, which I believe probably 2 years ago or 1.5 years ago, you already start putting together the idea of a core group of elements. So we leverage on that work, as we also leverage on preliminary comparison that who has seen this on metadata. And I know, and Melissa already mentioned, and Matt have done also some work in mapping the metadata. So what we would like to do is also add your existing mapping to this mapping, so that we actually see where we synergize or there is some divergence as well. And this is all the slides that I have. So I would like actually to open the discussion, although we only have 20 minutes and it's probably a little bit less. But I think it's very important that you ask any questions that help you to provide the feedback. So over to you. Who wants to start?
I can start, Susanna.
Carol, please.
So, hi. Yeah, so I've been looking at the documents. How do you want us to go about doing this feedback? Because I think, the temptation is for us to say, we're adding things that we think seem to be areas that are less represented, or make comments, but I'm not sure how that will work out. Will it turn into a bit of a zoo? So how would you like us to actually vocalize or write down our feedback?
So what we did with the Google document is that you can help, with the white paper. When we opened Steph, please help me here to make sure I say the right thing. When we had the white paper, we opened up for community comments. We asked actually to, the Google document was enabled for actually add comments on top of specific area. But I believe that we also had an area below where people could add some additional text. Can you remind me, please, how do we collect the comments on the white paper? Because it works quite well.
Yeah, we changed the document to commenting, so that it would show where the information would go, and then it would be a comment on the side, and that worked well. Currently, it's just open for anyone to edit, so we need to change that access point to some.
I think actually it's already open for comments. I think it is, but Carol, do you think would that be sufficient, or do you think, I know that sometimes there are many comments, everything gets, but.
I think we should try that and see how it goes.
Okay.
But I can see that there could be potentially quite a lot of expansion. because, you know, people will look and say, this is what happens when you do core elements. Everybody wants their core element in. But I think maybe for each, because you've got quite a few documents. You've got 4 documents, I think, that require comment. So maybe which is the approach for one, is it 4?
The best one, I would say the first one to read. I present
number of documents.
Yes, I will suggest that you start from the SOP. That's the first one I presented, because the SOP, for example, so can you actually see from my, I'm just looking at the answer, yes. You might not be able to read, but I'm opening the SOP document, the first one. So the SOP is one where it's the one where the list of what then is in the mapping spreadsheet, it's also. So it's easier to provide comments in the SOP document, I believe, because it might be a little bit more complicated to add comments on the spreadsheet. But what we could also do, we could also create a blank Google document where people can add, you know, if they have extensive tests to add. So as I say, let's start with just adding the comment to the Google document and start from the SOP document, please.
I'm not sure I have these documents. I'm looking on my shared documents that have been shared with me, and I don't see that I have them.
Sorry, who's speaking?
Sorry, this is Joan Starr.
Ah, Joan. Okay, so it's very simple. You are in the working group. Can you see my screen? Yes, very little, but you can. So this is the working. You have to be logged. You have to be logged in.
Oh, I go to BioCaddy. That's how I find them.
Yes, if you go in the BioCaddy.
Sorry, I thought I went to Google Drive.
Well, you access the Google Drive through the BioCaddy working group page. That'll get you where you need to go.
Oh, okay, got it. Started BioCaddy.
Let me quickly recap. Once you go in the working group 3 page, here, you have to be logged into the system. On the left-hand side is the group file, okay? And then here you can see W3 working group file in Google Drive. When you enter that, you access. Perfect.
Sorry, I'm a little slow on the uptake, I guess, here this morning.
But when we posted the slides, from the slides, I also put hyperlink, so you go directly to the document as explained in the slides. It actually might be simpler.
It might be better, Susanna, to go ahead and rename them so it's SOP as the first. Like
they are named. They are named like that.
Right, but the first thing you can see is BioCaddy DVI on every single file instead of SOP.
Okay. I'm going to.
Yeah, +1 on that. Yeah, I had to open every single one to see what they were. So +1 on the renaming.
Perfect. But that's the reason why I'm suggesting to use the slides I've just presented, because the slide has directly the link to the document. It might be simpler.
Well, renaming would work too.
Sure, yeah, definitely. Any specific questions that you might have in general with the process, with?
So this is Shraddha. I just want to know which document we need to return within 2 weeks. Which one is the first priority?
So what you should start with is the SOP. The SOP document.
So that has to be written within 2 weeks, right?
Well,
it's in the document it says BioCaddy metadata, or it says BioCaddy DVI/metadata workgroup 3/selected competency questions, metadata mapping, standards operating procedures. So you have to scroll over the title of the document to see which one's which.
Also, once you open one file, you might have seen that there is a list of related documents, so you just need to open one of the files, yes, and those files, they are all linked. So there is a list of related documents. It's a list from the Word file, from the Excel spreadsheet. It's a little bit more complicated too. I don't expect you to review the file on the call, but you have homework. But is there anything else that you would like to ask to explain, perhaps to help you during the review process, or what I say sounds, you know, reasonable and it's clear enough?
Is there anything you would like us not to do, Susanna? And is there, do you have a kind of, I have your priority order, which is to start with the SOP document and then to move forward. But I think part of the questioning was to do with, gosh, that's quite a lot of work to do. So we're going to do it sensibly in the next 2 weeks, given other duties and so forth. So do you have a kind of priority list? But particularly, what do you want us not to do?
Okay, so if you trust us in the sense of how the mapping has been done, how we are mapping the elements from those schema, then you don't need to review the detail of the mapping file, but what you need to review is that as we covered all the schema that we are listing actually here in the bottom-up approach, you know, we have generic metadata schema, okay, and then we have some domain, some life sciences one, which again, those one, it's a growing list. I would appreciate if you check that between the generic metadata schema that we list in the SOP, so this one here, I'm trying to highlight, okay, that include also previous mapping done by the NLM team, but also done by HUA student 2, and Melissa, if you have your work also listed there and there's somewhere we can access, we will add. So we want to be sure that the list of schema we start from, it's comprehensive. It's at least the generic one, okay? When it comes to the life science schema, it's obvious that this can be a very, very long list because we could add any databases out there, all the NCBI databases, for example, and look at all the schema. And of course, it's going to be it's a long process. But the goal at the moment, Carol, is to identify really what the high-level common metadata elements are. So perhaps having a representative set of the life sciences, but a sufficiently extensive set of the more generic one is what we want. So I would say, make sure we haven't missed anything.
Okay, Susanna, this is Melissa.
Yes.
Okay, just a couple points. One is, I'm not sure if you have on the list yet, and I can try to find it, but I know you said you have the HCLS profile, but do you have the actual spreadsheet where they did the alignment?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
great. So that was actually very similar, and I think, you know, it can be extended, but has a lot of overlap with what's going on here. The second thing is, and this is a little bit of a soapbox, so I apologize, but you know, I think it's really important to work with a number of different data integrators that are really trying to perform sustained data integration across multiple sources. So instead of focusing on the life science metadata example schemas from a set of projects, I would actually choose a set of integrators first because they've already done the hard work of aligning metadata schemas from multiple resources and have learned and fed back to those resources. And so that might be, you know, not to say that you shouldn't also do that, but I think it's really important to get those perspectives first.
And thanks, Melissa. It's actually, we have collected at least a look. It's not just collected, okay? So the work has not been done just to collect, but we look at the schema that existing data discovery initiatives are using. So this is section 2.1. I'm trying to highlight now in here, can you see it in the SOP. and then we are really underlaying to the specific model underlying those implementation. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, I guess just basically anybody who's really taken a diversity of resources and performed integration is going to have deep knowledge of the schemas of those resources and what's needed to align them already. And so just getting those perspectives. I mean, just from my own experience in working, for example, with all the model organism database resources, you know, they all represent the relationship between the organismal genotypes and the genes and the phenotypes differently, every single one of them. It's actually astonishing that they could be so different, right? So you learn a lot when you look across all those different sources about what a consensus model can be and where the errors and omissions are in the source databases. So those perspectives, we want to collect the other people like that have done that type of work. So it seems like you have some on there that are like that, but if everybody could kind of put their heads together and think about the diversity. I mean, I don't know who the group is that's doing the most work on that, for example, in structural biology. So, you know, if we could all put our heads together and figure out who are like the top 10 sort of diverse data integration experts, I think that would be a great list to have.
Please, we would like the input on the list, definitely. Just there is only perhaps one thing to say, that remember that the DDI might not go to that level of granularity, in the sense that we will have to decide what actually are the questions that the DDI can answer, which one are too deep and are too specific in a domain, because we won't be able to cover all the domain in a very granular way or very deep metadata.
Yeah, I mean, I think that doesn't, I mean, the data discovery index doesn't preclude the functionality of any of those data integrators out there. But at a high level, they have that perspective of just having seen it all, right?
Fair enough, absolutely. And this is also perhaps a feedback to send to the developer team, because that's why I was trying to explain what the working group does and what the developer team does, because then it brings into the implementation. So absolutely, any kind of experience, any other groups that we might have to look at and consider as part of the metadata survey in a way, but as part of the implementation to be passed to the developer team is very much welcome.
It's 9 o'clock, Susanna.
So let me try to, yes, indeed, it's almost time. So let me try to recap that the SOP document is the first thing, and I'm going to also send by email the link for the individual documents, so, and we are renaming them so that everything will be clearer. The SOP document, which is this one here that I've opened up, it's the one you should read first, because also explains the link and has the link to the mapping, to the use cases, and etc. Feedback on this, what we have missed, is really very important. Feedback also on generally on the use cases, again, take it with a pinch of salt, considering that perhaps not all the metadata elements have been aligned in all the questions, and looking at the core metadata element file, which is a working file where we are listing somehow the results of the bottom-down and top-down approach. It's also very, very useful. The other thing, actually, Carol, from you and from people with your same experience, we very much appreciate comments and suggestions on the next steps, which is section 3 in the SOP, as also had on my slide. One, we have the core list of metadata, okay? Yes, we need to prioritize them in rank, but then we need to start to model it. So any experience and suggestion on the different meta model and how we extend them, it's very important. And we have an initial list of meta models in here, which is here, page 3, as you can see. And we would like your input and suggestion on the applicability of those and your experience with those or any other that we might have missed. So in terms of how the comments should be delivered, as I say, let's try, like Steph was saying, using the comments function on these SOP documents. If we see that we have a lot of information, we either move them or try to move them at the bottom of the document, or try to make sure we answer or we act on those as we receive the comments. If you have a very long or very specific thing you want to flag to us, I suggest you use the W3C list, so the WG3 list, so that everybody actually can see your suggestion and comments, so that somehow we avoid duplication and we try to act promptly as much as possible, as soon as possible.
And when this is Kevin. So do you want us, if we're going to add things into the actual documents, do you want us to use track changes as a logistic perspective, or?
Right, okay, there is a suggest option which we're going to enable. There is a suggest option which is very useful.
Perfect.
Fantastic, thank you.
And the next call will be when, Susanna?
So the idea is that if we're going to give this 2 weeks time, we are indeed thinking about 3 weeks from now. So let me just go back also to the executive team, the executive group, to make sure that they have also the time to look at this. I can see we got a wrong URL from the research object ontology. Thank you for replacing it. So yes, approximately we are aiming to have a call in 2 weeks' time. Any other comments? Any other points that you want to make before we wrap up?
Mary, if you could add the URLs to the documents in the notes, that would be helpful.
For sure. And Steph, when we're posting the slides, we're going to post them under the working group 3 file, correct?
Yes.
Excellent. So under the group file of the working group 3, I'll put another link where we're going to put the presentations, and then you can have the presentation again to have the links to the different file if that would be more helpful.
Notes will be on the website on the work group 3.
Sorry, I could not hear.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, then. Thank you, everybody.
Bye. Thanks, Susanna.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.